If you want to achieve high FPS in your favorite games, the GPU is the most important component inside of a gaming PC. This component right here will literally determine how many FPS you get and how smooth the gaming performance overall is going to be. That being said, if you are looking for a new graphics card that fits your budget and needs, and on top of that performs amazingly well in your favorite titles, then stay, because I will show you the best graphics cards for 1080p, 1440p and even 4K resolution. All budgets included, by the way, and I will also show you the level of performance that you can expect with each GPU. You will find every graphics card linked down in the video description with the latest prices and availability in your region. My name is Valentino. That being said, let's start. I will start by talking about the 1080p GPUs. Now, these graphics cards will be ideal for 1080p resolution, but some of them are 1440p ready, and don't worry because I will talk about them in just a second. The first I want to talk about is a mid-range GPU for 1080p in the RX 6650 XT. This graphics card is one of the best value gaming graphics cards in the market, especially right now because it's going for 210 bucks. This is the cheapest price I've ever seen on this GPU, and you can basically play any game that you want at 1080p, even high demanding titles on high settings, and you will have a really good gaming experience. In fact, you can expect 85 plus FPS on average in high demanding games, and then if you want to play esports shooters like Fortnite, Valorant, CS2 and games of that nature in competitive settings, then you can expect 240 plus FPS on average depending on the CPU. Now, the CPU is quite important for esports games and for just any game overall, so if you have a CPU bottleneck, your graphics card will not work as expected and the game will feel very laggy and stuttery. So don't worry, I will talk about CPUs later on this video and how to get the right CPU for your graphics card. And then if you want a high-end experience at 1080p resolution, I recommend you getting the RX 6750 XT from AMD or the RTX 4060 from Nvidia. Now, the RX 6750 XT is actually faster than the 4060 and will give you really high performance at 1080p, and I'm talking about 100 plus FPS on average in high demanding titles at 1080p resolution, even the most high demanding games. And here the test was made in the most high demanding games like Cyberpunk 2077 and The Last of Us Part 1, and it's also 1440p ready because you get 12 gigs of VRAM in the 6750 XT, and the level of performance at 1440p will be around 60 to 70 plus FPS in those high demanding games. So with this GPU you are getting top tier performance at 1080p, and you can also run 1440p resolution with no issues. And then when it comes to esports games, you can expect 360 plus FPS depending on your CPU once again. And then if you must have Nvidia for around the same price point, for about 300 USD, you can get the RTX 4060, which I have tested before in the channel, and it is one of the best GPUs from Nvidia for 1080p resolution, but it is slightly slower than the 6750 XT, and you can expect around 90 plus FPS on average in those high demanding games I've mentioned before. In esports games, you can still achieve 360 plus FPS depending on the title and depending on your CPU, but overall the 4060 is a really good 1080p graphics card. Just keep in mind that it's slower for about the same price as the 6750 XT, so it's not as good in terms of price or performance. And also in the 4060 you get 8 gigs of VRAM instead of 12 gigs of VRAM like the 6750 XT, so it might not be as future-proof for 1080p as the 6750 XT from AMD. Now, as a bonus GPU for 1080p, if you want a budget graphics card, so you really want to spend less than 200 bucks, I recommend you going for a graphics card from the used market, and in this case I recommend you getting the RX 5700 XT. This is a GPU that performs like the RTX 3060, so really good when it comes to 1080p. I mean, you can achieve around 80 plus FPS when it comes to high demanding games, and then you can achieve 200 plus FPS in esports games, so really good performance for 1080p, and the price will be around 120 bucks. So really good price to performance, but it is going to be from the used market. And before we move into the best 1440p graphics cards, I want to tell you about the 1080p graphics cards that you should avoid buying because of its price to performance, meaning that the price for these graphics cards are higher than the ones that I recommended and they achieve slower performance. These GPUs are the RTX 3050, both the 6GB version and 8GB version. Both of them have horrible pricing and the level of performance is just not there better for 1080p. And then the next one is the RTX 3060 8GB version. Now the 3060 12GB version might make sense if you do something like content creation and you need more VRAM, but the 8GB version is slightly cheaper, but it is much worse and it has less VRAM, so do not get the 3060 8GB version. Now let's move to 1440p. Now 1440p is my favorite resolution. If you've been following the channel for a while, you know that I love this resolution because it's not as expensive as 4K, but it looks much better than 1080p, so it is the perfect balance in my opinion. And in order for a graphics card to be considered 1440p ready, well, it has to have at least 12 gigs of VRAM and the level of performance must be over 70 plus FPS in high demanding games on average. That way you ensure that you are achieving a smooth level of performance in both high demanding titles and esports games. If you are working with a tight budget and you want to play at 1440p and still achieve amazing performance, I recommend you getting the RX 7700 XT, which right now, by the time of filming, it has the lowest price I've ever seen on this 7700 XT. Now this GPU has 12 gigs of VRAM and will achieve 85 plus FPS when it comes to 1440p high demanding games, high to ultra settings, so very smooth gameplay, and then you can achieve 240 plus FPS competitive settings in most esports games depending on your CPU, which, as I said before, I will be talking about this CPU in just a second. Now this graphics card right now is going for $350. As I said before, the cheapest price I've ever seen on this graphics card, and I want to say that maybe when you're watching this the price goes back up or maybe it goes even lower, so I do recommend you checking the latest prices and availability from the links down in the video description. Now if you have more money to spend, you can get the best value graphics card for 1440p in my opinion, which is the RX 6800 XT. The reason why this one is the best value one is because the price is not as high as other graphics cards, but you can still achieve a really high gaming performance, and I'm talking about 90 plus FPS in high demanding titles, high to ultra settings, and over 300 plus FPS in most esports games competitive settings depending on the CPU. At the moment this GPU is going for $430, meaning that once again it is not as expensive as other GPUs and you can play any game that you want at 1440p really with no issues. And keep in mind that you can also play at 4K resolution depending on the game and depending on the settings. This GPU comes with 16 gigs of VRAM, so it's a very future-proof 1440p gaming graphics card, and it is also 4K ready. So if you want to play games that are not too demanding at 4K, you can play easily, or if you're going to be playing high demanding games, then just turn on FSR for you to achieve better performance in those high demanding titles at 4K ultra settings. And then if you have more money to spend, you can get an upper mid-range graphics card. Here you have two options. You either go with the RX 7900G RE from AMD, which is quite faster than the 6800 XT. You will be achieving 100 plus FPS on average in high demanding games, or you can go with the RTX 4070 Super from Nvidia. Both of these GPUs will achieve very similar performance for 1440p resolution, and you will be happy with either of them. Now the 7900G RE is quite cheaper at $530, while the RTX 4070 Super is going for around $600. So you are spending about $70 to $80 more with the 4070 Super, but you get DLSS, which is the Nvidia upscaler, and it works better than FSR. You get a better level of ray tracing performance, and it is also better for most content creation and productivity work applications in case you are interested in doing more than just gaming. So in my opinion, if you want the best graphics card overall, go for the 4070 Super and spend the extra, but if you want the best price to performance for gaming, go with the 7900G RE from AMD. Another important thing for you to know is that the 4070 Super comes with 12 gigs of VRAM, while the 7900G RE comes with 16 gigs of VRAM. So even though the 7900G RE is a bit more future-proof for 1440p, I have tested plenty of games at 1440p resolution with my 4070 Ti, which has 12 gigs of VRAM as well, and I haven't had any issues even in the most high demanding titles in terms of VRAM, because Nvidia is actually more efficient than AMD when utilizing this VRAM. And then with both graphics cards, you can expect 360 plus FPS on average in esports games. Then if you are looking for a high-end graphics card for 1440p resolution, I recommend you getting either the RTX 4070 Ti Super from Nvidia or the RX 7900 XT from AMD. Just like before, both are going to give you really similar gaming performance, 120 plus FPS on average in high demanding games, high to ultra settings. So here you are getting top tier performance out of both GPUs for 1440p, and the difference between these two graphics cards is basically the same difference as the 4070 Super and 7900G RE I mentioned before. So if you want the better graphics card overall, the 4070 Ti Super is better level of ray tracing performance, better upscaler, and also better cheaper for most productivity work applications. However, the 7900 XT in this case is about $120 cheaper, so if you want the best price to performance for gaming, go with AMD. With both of these graphics cards, you can expect 400 plus FPS in esports games, once again depending on the CPU and games that you play, and the 7900 XT is going for $650 by the time of filming, and the 4070 Ti Super is going for almost $800 USD when filming this video. And before we move into the best 4K GPUs, just like I did with 1080p, I will give you the 1440p graphics cards to avoid, and in this case it's very straightforward. I would avoid the RTX 4060 Ti, both the 8GB version graphics card and the 16GB version one. Both of these have a really high price for the level of performance that they provide, and honestly I wouldn't recommend you spending more than $300 on a graphics card with 8GB of VRAM that's supposed to be ready for 1440p like the 4060 Ti 8GB version. And then if you want to play at 4K and you want a cheaper GPU, now this is not going to be cheap, but nothing is cheap at 4K resolution, to be honest. However, these are the cheapest ones I would recommend you for 4K if you want to play high demanding games, and those are the same as the high-end 1440p graphics cards in the 4070 Ti Super and 7900 XT. Both of these will achieve 70 plus FPS when it comes to 4K resolution, and if you play on the most high demanding titles, high to ultra settings, and you turn on the upscaler technology, which for Nvidia is called DLSS and for AMD is called FSR, you will be achieving from 80 to 90 plus FPS on average, depending on the exact game and depending on the setting. So overall, you still achieve really smooth performance for 4K, and those two graphics cards are on the cheaper side of things when compared to higher end GPUs that I will be talking about in just a second. Now for esports games, you can expect 240 plus FPS depending on the CPU and settings. Then if you want higher end graphics cards, I recommend you getting either the 7900 XTX from AMD or RTX 4080 Super from Nvidia, and the difference between the two is the same difference as the 4070 Ti Super and 7900 XT. The 7900 XTX, it's really good when it comes to the gaming performance at 4K, so is the 4080 Super. Both are very similar, but the 7900 XTX is going for around $130 less. So if you want the better graphics card overall and you don't care about spending the extra, then the 4080 Super might be worth it, but if you want the best price to performance specifically for gaming, the 7900 XTX is going to be your best option. Also, both will achieve 85 plus FPS on average when it comes to high demanding games at 4K resolution, or even more if you turn on the upscaler depending on the game that you want to play, and both of these will achieve really high FPS in esports games depending on the CPU, and I'm talking about 300 plus FPS at least. And then if you want the best performance graphics card in the entire market and you don't care about spending a lot of money, I recommend you getting the RTX 4090. I mean, with this one you will be achieving the fastest performance, and I'm talking about over 110 plus FPS at 4K in high demanding games, high to ultra settings, and the fastest level of performance on esports titles as well. Now, every time I look at this graphics card, the price is at least $100 higher, because I do believe Nvidia stopped producing them to get ready for the RTX 5090 coming next year. So right now this graphics card is going for $1950 for the cheapest model. I mean, it's a beautiful white model. I love the RTX 4090, and honestly, if you have a lot of money to spend and you just want the best of the best, then this high-end graphics card is the perfect one for you. And the GPUs to avoid for 4K resolution are the RTX 4080, and I'm talking about the 4080 non-super, because that one is more expensive than the 4080 Super, so it doesn't make any sense. And then I recommend you avoiding the RTX 4070 Ti, which is the graphics card that I have on my current system, but I wouldn't recommend it for 4K, mainly because it has 12GB of VRAM and is only about $50 cheaper than the 4070 Ti Super, which has 16GB of VRAM and is a much better option if you want to go with a cheaper graphics card. And remember that prices might be different when you're watching this one, and also the availability. So if you want to see the latest in-stock graphics card, you will have those in the video description. And I want to say that even if you buy one of these recommended graphics cards where you're supposed to get the perfect performance for each resolution, if you have the wrong CPU, then you are going to bottleneck your graphics card, so it's not going to perform as expected. So if you do not want that to happen to you and you want to achieve high FPS in your favorite games with no stutters and no bottlenecks, I do recommend you watching my video on the best gaming PC build for all budgets and resolutions, 3P, 1440p and 4K. And by the way, you make sure every component is compatible with each other, no bottlenecks and no stutters with those systems, so you can find that video in the top right corner of the screen. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one.